Hello, I'm Darren again. Today's topic is continuing a short series looking at the common traits associated with narcissistic personality. Today I'll be focusing on the resentful nature of narcissism. So if you find this topic to be interesting, please consider subscribing. So to begin with, the common characteristics of narcissism include a huge sense of entitlement. There's an inflated sense of self-importance and superiority. There's an excessive need for admiration and validation. They can also be highly disagreeable and highly resistant to criticism. There's also being highly envious, highly competitive, and having a lack of empathy for others. And underlying these characteristics is a profound sense of resentment, which is one of the reasons why their relationships tend to be fractious and troubled. Narcissists tend to live a deluded fantasy of being amazing, powerful, and deserving of special treatment, so any threat to that fantasy can bring up rage and vindictiveness. Now at a low level, they might just moan about others they see as more accomplished or popular than they are, or they might complain that they are misunderstood, unappreciated, or being treated unfairly. But if they feel criticised or insulted, well, they can hold a grudge, sometimes even for decades, fantasizing about how someday they'll get to even the score. But why do narcissists feel such intense resentment? Well, at the root of this resentment often lies their deep-seated insecurities. They project an image of superiority and self-importance, but internally they're often fragile and insecure. And this discrepancy between their external facade and internal reality can create a breeding ground for resentment. But how does the resentment manifest? Well, firstly, in a romantic relationship, they might control their partner through emotional manipulation, isolating them from friends and family, and undermining their self-confidence. They can feel uncomfortable with the partner having anyone in their lives other than them. They also struggle with the thought of their partner having any kind of autonomy, so continually criticize and undermine. Now, while they might feel a temporary sense of power, they also resent the partner for being so easily controlled. This mirrors their own inner weakness and fuels their resentment. Secondly, narcissistic people often have an inflated sense of superiority and entitlement. They believe they deserve more than others and can become resentful whenever reality doesn't match their expectations, which it rarely does. For instance, if a narcissist feels they should be promoted at work but their colleague gets the promotion instead, their reaction is not just disappointment but a deep-seated resentment. They can feel as if that promotion was theirs by right and it was taken from them unfairly. To a narcissist, it had nothing to do with competency. So they might belittle their colleagues' achievements, spread rumours about them, or look for ways to undermine them. Thirdly, narcissistic people crave constant validation and admiration. When they don't receive it, they can become quite bitter. They believe others are or should be envious of them. So if others don't validate that belief by showing envy, they might feel, well, ordinary. And this must be rejected. The narrative must always fit their self-perception. Now, an example could be, someone I once knew with high trait narcissism, well, they bitterly accused someone of hating them because they didn't show any signs of envy. It actually angered them that someone wouldn't fawn over their new car. And for the next few years, every chance he got, he would gossip about the guy, insult him, criticize him, because he didn't show the right reaction to a new car. But the envious nature of narcissists extends to many areas of their lives. They can fear any success their partner might have as it might overshadow them. Narcissistic people generally don't like to share the spotlight. And this envy can lead to behaviours aimed at sabotaging their partner's success, keeping them in a state of strain and unfulfillment. And the sabotage could be withholding important information, undermining the partner's efforts, refusing to give support, creating dramas and distractions. This on top of their constant criticism and discouraging remarks. However, if the partner struggles or fails, the narcissist can feel a twisted sense of satisfaction, but also despises the partner for not being successful. The partner's failure might reflect badly on them. But if the partner, or indeed anyone they know, succeeds at anything, Well, a narcissist can be resentful of their achievements. They might downplay the achievement, criticize, or even create conflicts just to shift the focus back to themselves. This behaviour stems from their lack of empathy, their all or nothing thinking, and an inability to feel happy for others. It's almost like, if you increase, that means I must decrease. Another aspect of narcissistic resentment is their highly disagreeable nature. Narcissists tend to be argumentative and say no to pretty much everything, even things that could benefit them. They have a contrary opinion on most matters and often focus on irrelevant details to either distract or to prove others wrong. To agree to something or maybe validate someone else could suggest that they're flawed, in error, or they might feel as if the other person has some kind of empowerment. But that doesn't align with their inner narrative, so it must be rejected. So the constant need to argue and be right fuels their resentment towards those who challenge them. Now, when they catch someone in a lie, well, they might feel a sense of satisfaction for catching them, but they resent them for lying. But they can also feel resentment towards people for being truthful and not giving them the satisfaction of proving them to be liars. Next, narcissistic people continually demand love, attention, and admiration, but no matter how much they receive, it's never enough. They continually feel empty and unfulfilled. But they often blame those closest to them, especially their partners, for not meeting their impossible standards, for not seeing them as the absolute centre of everything, and this deepens their resentment. However, if the partner tries to meet their impossible standards, although they might feel a sense of satisfaction and control, it's only for a brief moment. It never lasts. Quite often they will almost immediately focus on another area the partner is lacking. And the more the partner tries to please, the less respect they have for the partner, which brings up even more resentment. Moving on, narcissistic people often accuse others of doing the very things they are guilty of themselves, projecting their insecurities onto others. For instance, they might accuse a partner of cheating, projecting their own unfaithful tendencies onto them. Now, when the partner denies these accusations, they're accused of lying because the answer doesn't fit with how they feel. But if the partner can provide proof of their innocence, well, a narcissistic person can despise them for being right and for not giving them a reason to validate their suspicions. And this creates a vicious cycle of mistrust and resentment. So in conclusion, the resentful nature of narcissism is a complex and multifaceted issue, but their deep-seated insecurities, their need for constant validation, and their inability to empathize with others can create a perpetual cycle of bitterness, mistrust, envy, and resentment. They can resent their partners, their friends, their colleagues. They can even resent themselves at times if they're experiencing a narcissistic collapse. And this makes it incredibly challenging for anyone to maintain a healthy relationship with them. They live in a world of entitlement and instant gratification, but the things they demand never fully give them what they want. And rather than look inwards, they project all that bitterness, shame, disappointment, and resentment outwards towards others. And it's usually those who care about them, those who are closest to them. They can despise people for being flawed and weak, but also for their humility and authenticity. They can despise people for saying no, but also despise them for trying to please them. They can despise people for leaving them, but also for staying with them and putting up with the crap. Now, I don't normally talk like this on my channel, but when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, no amount of reasoning, pleading, loving can change them. In fact, more often than not, the harder people try, it actually brings up more resentment. Now, I'm a believer in exceptions, but in those cases, they would have to want to change, be honest with themselves, face parts of themselves they've projected onto everyone else their whole lives. Quite often the difficulty is that due to their maladaptive defense mechanisms, they would rather the world changed so they don't have to. So there's a brief outline of the resentful nature of narcissistic personality. Now, as always, if there's anything I've missed, please feel free to use the comment section, or some interesting conversations start from these videos. But if you find this topic to be interesting, please consider subscribing, and until next time, thanks for watching.